Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar entitled Protect Your Last Line of Defense. This event is brought to you by Sandz Solutions Philippines in partnership with Asigra. Before we get started, my name is Jelay Fuertes. I am the Sales Director from Sandz Solutions Philippines, and I will be acting as your host and moderator for this afternoon session. Few house rules to remember. We have placed all the participants on mute mode. For any questions, please feel free to type it on the chat box and we will address it during the Q&A portion, or you may want to send a private message to Sans Marketing, one of the hosts on this event, and we will get back to you on that. We would also like to inform everyone that this session is being recorded. We are at an era where technology is not the only thing that is evolving. Malicious threats have also become so sophisticated and strategic in nature that perimeter defenses are not just enough. Joining us this afternoon are a panel of experts from the industry to share their insights and expertise on how you, our clients, can protect your last line of defense. First on our panel is Mr. Johnny Calvario. He is the CISO and Head of Information Security and Governance Division of UCPB. He is responsible for defining, implementing, and maintaining the bank-wide information security and IT-related risk strategies and program. He has more than 26 years of experience in the IT industry with 20 years of information security and business continuity consultancy experience. Good afternoon, Johnny.
Good afternoon, Jelay. Thank you for the introduction.
Good
Am I now
afternoon.
being heard? And
Yes, sir, you are being
can you?
heard.
Okay.
Okay.
So, good
So,
afternoon, my fellow security professionals. Good
okay.
afternoon.
Our next speaker is a backup technology veteran with over 18 years of experience in cloud-based data protection. Mr. Aaron Farajun, Executive Vice President of Asigra and responsible for the company's global expansion, marketing, business development, and long-term strategic activities for the company's cloud backup and recovery software platform. Good afternoon, Aaron. It's nice seeing you again.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Good afternoon. Okay, completing our panel of speakers today is a strong advocate of software-defined data centers, disaster recovery, and business continuity. Mr. Henry Velasco, Managing Director of Sandz Solutions Philippines, has over 30 years of experience in the IT industry. He currently leads a team of Sandz in providing the Philippine market with managed services, focusing on their expertise in data protection and infrastructure optimization. Good afternoon, Mr. Velasco.
Gandang hapon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, we have a full agenda for this hour-long webinar. So I won't keep you guys waiting and hand you over to our very first speaker, Mr. Johnny Calvario, to talk about the current state of IT security. Go ahead, Sir Johnny.
Thank you, Jelay. Again, good afternoon, my fellow security professionals. First, allow me to thank Sandz Solutions Philippines for inviting me this afternoon. So my task this afternoon is to share with you the state of cybersecurity, the lessons, mistakes, and experiences. I hope at the end of this talk, you will be able to bring some valuable takeaways, which I hope in whatever way will help you improve your way of managing your cybersecurity. Next slide, please. So, well, if you visit any cybersecurity related sites today, you will realize that the threat landscape are continuously going up. No? So attack surface increase tremendously. Attack becoming very sophisticated. Attacks are highly targeted and ever persistent. No? So let me focus my discussion this afternoon on three items. No? These three top threats, namely malware detection, email threats, and malicious URL, are the most numbers of detection in terms of attempts this 2021. No, take note that these numbers are per day, no, not per month, but rather per day. No, it changes every day. The numbers are keeps on uh, uh, shoot up. No, so so URL hosted means that these are the malicious URL hosted in the Philippines, while URL victims are URL used or accessed by users with malicious link located in Manila or in PH. No? So let me just discuss and focus on the three items because on my last day or reports received from our trusted partner, these are actually the top three threats. And for banking industry, we actually reported monthly to BSP the top three threats. No, and in my bank, no, in UCPB, these are the three top threats reported by UCPB to BSP last month on the March of month of March. No, so next slide, please. Okay, so let me use the three elements of cybersecurity management, namely people, process, and technology. No? So let me start with people first. No? So in our language, it is actually manpower. No? I think most of you will agree that the number of cybersecurity professionals are at the moment is insufficient, no, to meet our requirements in various industries, no, especially the banking and finance industry. In fact, cybersecurity professionals have become scarce that industries are fighting for the same talents. No? More than the challenge of numbers, there's also challenge in shortage of cybersecurity professionals with advanced cyber skills. No? I can only wish everyone good luck in finding highly competent, experienced threat hunters, incident responders, and security architects. No? Shortage in cyber security professionals is actually growing. No? From the latest literature that I've read, there is at least 3 to 4 million jobs for cybersecurity professionals worldwide. And most of these job vacancies have been long outstanding due to lack of talents available. As a result, workloads is actually increasing. Existing cybersecurity staff are experiencing event fatigue already. You know, so while prospect for hiring immediately immensely increase, the changing landscape has also demanded more in terms of investment to continuously enhance their skills and capability. You know, during the hiring process, I realized that most applicants have not tapped their full potential yet in terms of learning and utilizing security technologies. If these trends will continue, we are confronted with a situation when the security team is actually busy putting out cybersecurity fires, while in fact, they have not yet learned how to use or properly use the host. No? So sadly, and this is the reality, when these professionals have acquired the skills, they also begin to scout for opportunities outside your organization. They move on and they struggle to find qualified replacement continue. So that's the problem currently in manpower. Habits, no, are also ingrained with people. Good habits, no problem. Bad habits, when uncorrected, transform to bad practices. Bad practices in hygiene, big problem. So to name a few, their big bad practices include the inability or use of weak password for privilege account. No, these are very common. Uh, Bad coding. No? So our developers actually don't have secured application standard to follow in developing in-house application. Use of unsecured services. No? So every time that you conducted a vulnerability assessment in your organization, you will always find the unsecured services running on your technologies. No? So bad habits are like a comfortable bed. No? Easy to get in, but hard to get out. No? How does one break a habit? No, it's actually very difficult to break the habit. You cannot actually break bad habit. But what you can do is you replace it with good one. So mindset. Next areas to discuss is mindset. No? The challenge today is how to shift the mindset of IT security professionals from operational to risk focus. No? So most of IT security professionals, sorry, my fellow IT security professionals, no? Most of us are actually doing investigation, no? So reactive rather than doing threat hunting or proactive threat hunting. So that's the problem. Mind shifting. No? So accountability is about when there is an incident, no? When you experience a cyber incident. No? So you need to know who are the people that you can trust. No? People that can be dependent on during the incident. Who among them will be the first respondent? Who among your people will not crack under extreme pressure? No? So who among them can be consistently relied upon at any point of an incident? No? So as security professionals, you need to be very prepared when you experience cyber incident. No? Because life will never be the same when you experience cyber security incident. Okay. Culture is when well, people make up and define the culture. The organization, behavior of people, and how people act together is a culture. When when one understands that organization's culture, there is now ability to build team, manage conflict, and work as one, and overcome challenges. As IT security professional, we need to change the culture of our end user. No? So it's not enough only to uh, not to click the link or not to open a malicious email, but also to report it. So changing the culture. Not only not clicking the link, but also report the possible malicious email. Okay, that's my discussion about people. Next slide, please. Moving on to process. Process from a cybersecurity perspective is an interplay of critical management procedures, benchmarking and tailor fitting, health check, activation of cybersecurity incident response team, monitoring and reporting. These are some of the critical cybersecurity related processes that IT security must perform in your everyday life. So uh, going back to security management procedures, I can name at least 7 critical management procedures. Started with vulnerability management. This is where cybersecurity needs to perform regular BAPT, regular compromise assessment. No? So to be able to know whether there's an ongoing attack in your network or there is a possible entry point to your network. Incident management is about readiness when a disaster happened. No? So you need to have a documented incident management procedures so that when incident happen, you can immediately activate your CSERT. No? So I'm not sure whether all IT security professionals present today have this documented cybersecurity incident management procedures. If you don't have one, you may need to start developing one for your organization. Next is security monitoring. Security monitoring, whether it is first set of eyes or second set of eyes, you need to have a very strong security monitoring team. No? Because of the first challenge that I discussed earlier about lack of skilled professional, no? Most, if not all, mature organization now actually subscribe to a second set of eyes. No? So second set of eyes is a service that professionals will provide to organization to be your uh, second set of eyes doing eye on glass 24 by 7. Threat intelligence is another important security or cybersecurity management procedures for you to be able to regularly fine-tune your technology controls. No, having a sound threat intel, you can actually proactively configure your security controls to address or to combat new releases of TTPs or tactics and procedures, no, or IOCs, no, indication of compromise, no. So you can use these threat intel feeds to regularly update and enhance your technology controls, no. So all IT security must one way or another focus on actionable items released by your threat intel partner. Other important cyber security procedures include change management. No? So do you have a documented change management as an security professionals when you change something on your existing security controls? For example, you want to change existing firewall rules, no? So that change may introduce hole to your organization. Have you ever informed your or require the approval of your oversight unit like the CISO, the risk management, or even internal audit? No? So in managing technology controls, you need to involve also your oversight units. Crisis management, again, during the crisis management, no, especially during the cyber incident scenario, there you must have a documented cyber security incident response team or plan with very clear defined roles, no, because IT security during cyber incident, your main task is really to put back your environment to clean environment, no? Going back to a clean environment. So there are also similarly important tasks, no, during the cybersecurity incident, no. um, who will run after the money, no? Who will work with law enforcement agency, who will report to regulators or NPC if needed, who will report to both external and internal stakeholders, no. So you must have a very defined crisis management so that not only IT security will be involved during the management of cybersecurity incident. Last but not the least, patch management. No? This is what we call mean time to patch. No? How soon your office is able to detect that there is this new patch for your operating system. But most of the time, the failure of IT security is also detecting the patches needed for your applications. No? You have to patch also the application, not only the operating system. You also need to patch your network components, not only the operating systems. No? So in terms of, again, processes, these are the type of processes that you need to focus on. Benchmarking, no? So benchmarking, there are lots of standard in the industry, namely ISO, PCI DSS, there is this BSP regulation, there two important framework for IT security is cyber kill chain and MITRE attack. So if you want to have a sound framework in designing your secured architecture design, you can use cyber kill chain and MITRE attack. Then you have to tailor fit the configuration of your technology controls. Health check. Health check is about doing regular fine tuning of your technology controls. No? Similar to cars. No? So you have to subject your technology controls on a regular maintenance. No? Health check is ensuring that the features of your technology controls are enabled and the security configurations are set based on the recommended setting of the vendor. How many of you in the industry are doing regular health check of your technology controls? Monitoring and reporting. My suggestion to all IT security professionals is always report. Always report what have you detected and blocked. Report to your oversight unit. Okay. So next slide, please. Next slide is about technology. No? To paint the full picture, security tools from different network layers need to be integrated, to share detection capabilities, integrating, automating is very important. No? With lack of security professionals, you really need to integrate and automate some of the tasks of IT security. So, but more importantly, these technology controls must correlate all the logs and events. So allow me to start my discussion with the configured. Let me discuss later the design. Configured means uh, you need to have a minimum baseline security standard for all your technology controls. So that you cannot rely on the skills and experience of your people. Having a documented minimum baseline security standard for not only for operating system but also for technology controls will help you uh, implement a uniform, secured technology controls or properly configured technology controls. Next is tuning. Again, as discussed earlier, technology controls is similar to car. If you don't submit your car to a regular maintenance, you will experience a bug down. Similar to technology controls, even if the controls was configured properly during the implementation, because of the quick change in techniques and IOCs. There may be new techniques and IOCs that your technology controls may not be able to detect because it's not properly tuned to address and detect new IOCs and TTPs. Again, integrate and correlation is very important. You must integrate all the or operating system logs, network logs, application logs, and also your security controls log to your SIM. If you don't have SIM, you have to manage these millions of logs manually and decentrally. So I'm not sure whether there are still organization in any industry that don't have SIM. So if you don't have SIM, I'm not saying that you cannot actually do your logs review of logs. No, you can, but you will experience event fatigue as mentioned earlier. So one area is also important about technology is about capacity. Capacity is about monitoring the resource of your technology controls. Resource, there are four major subsystems that are very important to monitor in your technology controls, namely CPU, memory, disk, and network. So if one of these subsystems may become full, no, your technology control may stop detecting and logging very important events. So it's really very important for the IT security professionals to regularly monitor the health of your technology controls. Second is about last is about return of investment. As IT security professionals, no, this may include CISOs, this may include head of IT security under IT, this may include executive in IT security departments. No, we need to educate our senior management and board about the value of having these technology controls in terms of presenting to them how you quickly identify or detect malicious traffic. This is your mean time to detect. And equally important is how quickly IT security office was able to resolve the detected malicious traffic. This is what we call MTTR. No? Reporting MTTD, MTTR, mean time to patch. These are the most important areas that your board and management to know, so that they can realize that the investment that the numbers they invest in technology controls are actually working for the organization. So you don't want to be hit by a security a security incident. No, when you hit a security incident, no, life will never be the same again. Trust me, trust me. Okay. Next slide, please, Angela. So last discussion is about design. So again, as mentioned earlier, you can use MITRE attack or cyber kill chain in drawing up a cyber or a secured architecture design, because cyber kill chain and MITRE attack actually define numbers of steps and procedures in targeting an organization to attack. No? So there are recommended controls per stage. No? From the initial stage where reconnaissance, weaponization, and delivery happened, there are related controls. Another controls related to exploitation and installation, you can define numbers of controls there. No? On the last stage, this is where the command and control, action, and exfiltration. No, you need to have controls related, for example, to data, data exfiltration, no? Like database management control, or uh, backup, no, backup of your critical data. No, this is where some of the IT security. This is one area that some of IT security has actually missed. No, so you may have uh, 20 to 25 technology controls. No, but if you don't have controls related to data backup, no, even if you have the most expensive sets of technology controls, no, your data when data was ransom or captured by hackers or attackers, or even, for example, the disk of your critical database or the disk of your critical function become unavailable, no, you will feel the pain. So that's why, aside from creating or crafting the most sophisticated technology controls design, you need also to address the security of your critical data. So if you miss Next slide, please. If you miss all of this, no, and you will suddenly experience a security breach. No, everybody knows that security breach may result into financial and revenue loss. No? And sometimes you will face a legislative battle or legal battle. No? So, and of course, the most important and unquantifiable impact is reputational loss. No? So some companies experiencing cybersecurity suddenly uh, uh, experience business interruption, or worse, the business will close. So that is actually my last slide. So my next slide, please. My takeaways for this afternoon is that uh, the selection and implementation of controls is not a beauty contest, nor a game of chance, but one's of purpose and strategy. So I hope that in the coming days will allow us to engage each other face to face. Let us also hopeful that the road to recovery will be brighter in the coming months. Once again, let me thank Sandz Solutions Philippines, and thank you, friends. No, I saw familiar names. I saw former staff. I saw former clients. Thank you for your attention. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Johnny, for sharing with us your expertise on the current state of IT security. We now understand that there are many layers to consider, such as people, process, and of course, technology. One thing also to remember that any breach can cause severe consequences to our businesses, so it's important to have proper defenses. Before proceeding to the next speaker, just a quick reminder for everyone, our chat box is still open for any questions that you may have during the entire seminar. Just type it in and we'll get back to you during the Q&A portion. So, we've heard about the current state of IT security. I'll now hand you over to Mr. Aaron Farahun for protecting your last line of defense. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks a lot, Jale. Hopefully you can hear me and maybe even see me. But I think most of my presentation, I'll just go on to the next slide here. Is I'll focus on a specific area that all of us have to deal with, and that's really just backup. I won't dwell on the first too many slides here. You'll see some numbers, but really the point here is that ransomware numbers are growing. As Johnny was saying, they're growing exponentially. They're getting a lot more sophisticated, and there's a lot more dollars at stake. And so what if you want to translate this into our daily lives, what it really means is there's a lot of money at stake for the bad guys. And so there's more incentive for them. And keep something that Johnny was talking about in mind as you think really just about backup. This is my portion of the conversation today, is just focused on backup and why it's to protect it. Because there's a lot of money, the bad guys in the last 3 to 5 years have been focusing a lot of their energy and resources and money on attacking your backups, because at the end of the day, backups are just like our slides and the title of the presentation, the discussion today is it's the last line of defense. If nothing else is going to work and you do lose your data, you're going to go to your backup and you're going to try to do a restore. So if they can prevent you from restoring your data, they know that you are going to have to pay. And so that's why in the last 3 to 5 years, the bad guys have been spending a lot of energy and resources on killing your backup, or really destroying it, or making sure that you can't restore your data. So next slide, please. And another important thing to be aware of is knowing who your adversaries are. Not all the bad actors or threat actors, they're called different names in different organizations. They're not all the same. Some of them are insider threats, some of them are hacktivists, depending on the kind of organization that you operate or are working with or in. Some of them are just kids honing their skills, They're just trying things out, and you happen to be somebody that they feel they found some loophole somewhere, and they're going to try to use it. Some of them are mercenaries, so they are paid in many cases by state actors. They're paid to go and to try to do damage in your organization. And most of them that are trying to do this for money are actually organized criminals. This is kind of a very big business, as I said, these days. And if we switch to the next slide, they spend a lot of money and resources and energy um, uh, because there's a lot of money in it for them. They make a lot of money doing this. And so, where do they get all the money and the resources? So, first of all, they have a lot of skill. These are very sophisticated, very technically astute actors. Many of them have worked in government organizations, have now have left them, in the seeking money. So they actually make money four different from selling your data from four different ways. The first time is they encrypt your data, then they make you pay for a decryption key, and then after you've paid them some money through bitcoins or some other cryptocurrency, there's I think over 1,200 or 1,400 different types of cryptocurrency there. So unfortunately, if you do get hit or you know someone that got hit, you might even think about involving a professional negotiator. There are even professional negotiators out in the world, and they provide these services of how to work with them and how to ask for discounts, because sometimes they even give discounts, believe it or not. It's very much a business. And then, so once you've paid, they know that your organization is a payer, and they don't always give you all your data back. They usually hold some of it back, 5% to 15% even nowadays, because now they know you're a payer. So once you've paid some money, they now know that you'll pay them again, and then many companies end up paying them a second time. And then the third time is this ransom back stolen data, which means that they basically say, look, we've given you almost all of your data back, but you need to pay us a third time, and if you don't, we're going to put all your dirty laundry out in public. And then many people pay them a third time, and then once you've paid them a third time, they actually have no morals. There's no honor among thieves, as they say, and they actually take your data and they sell it out on the dark web. Not your data. It could be your company's data, or your customers' data, your patients' data, depending, on the kind of business that you operate or the organization that you work in. So they actually make money with your data. They get paid four times. The next slide, please. So why are there so many victims, you might ask yourself, and why are people not getting ahead of this? And it's really something that Johnny had attested to. He had like kind of this rainbow slide, and it's the one at the crest at the top, and it was really the mindset. And the mindset is a two-way thing, right? We in the industry have a mindset, yourselves, trying to defend yourselves and trying to build processes and solutions and capabilities to prevent this. But the bad guys also have a mindset, and that's something to always keep mindful about. Is they have a mindset as well. So our mindset is, we think that if we do all these processes and we sign up to services and we do other things, or even we walk around thinking that we've done enough. We have this kind of false sense of security, and this is actually the most dangerous element of walking around thinking you've done enough, and you've got top of the line backup technology, you've done all the processes, this 3-2-1, 3 copies of my data, 2 different types of media, one of them being offsite and air gapped. I've got really good expensive front door security or front of the house security. I'm protected. I'm good. I don't really need to worry about that. And this false sense of security is what the bad guys are hoping that their victims have, because then they strike them. And they've done this in the world of backup a couple of different ways. But essentially, the bad guys, also have a mindset, and their mindset is to go and get rich and get money as fast as they can. So then, what is this kind of overall strategy? I'll just kind of give you some insight into what a strategic approach or a mindset to have is you want to make yourself expensive, to hack, expensive. And what I mean by expensive is, you want to build in really good defenses and really good processes, as Johnny was saying. And the whole point is that if you, when expensive, I mean the hackers, if they have to spend a lot of time and energy and skill then they're just going to move on to the next victim, because there are so many that have a false sense of security. They're not doing enough or really almost anything. You only need to be better than the next guy on their list, the next organization on the list. It's kind of like the old story of your friend and you in the jungle and the tiger, and the tiger is running and catching you guys, and you're telling your friend is asking you, well, why are you running away? Do you really think the two of us can outrun the tiger? And you tell your friend, I don't have to outrun the tiger, I just have to outrun you. And this is the same thing here. You almost have to assume that you're going to get hit one way or another. And one of the ways of avoiding this, because if they really want to, they will go after you. If they really want your data or your clients or your patients or your organization's data, they will get you. So you just have to try to make it more expensive for them so that they move on to the next victim. So I'll go on to the next slide here, and kind of explain to you how they've done this in the world of backup. If you could build this slide out for me, right at to the end. Thank you. And then it's really kind of in the last 3-4 years been this cat and mouse, good guy, bad guy kind of approach here. And originally, about 5 years ago, it started. Maybe 6 years ago now, it started. They would just land some ransomware on your network. It would, encrypt your data or your users' data, and then you would go, and you didn't know what to do, and so you ended up paying the ransom, and then you would hopefully get your data back. And then the industry and the authorities actually got involved in this because this was happening so often. And the authorities basically said, you need to kind of do three things, or make sure you're doing at least three things. And those three things are patch your systems, educate your users. That's the number one thing. And the third one is have a good backup scheme, have a good backup strategy. Just assume you're going to get hit and you'll be able to recover. So the industry went out and they did that, and the IT professionals shored up their backup solutions and they made sure that they could test them and so on. So that's great. So then, as I said earlier, the bad guys started to attack backups, and they did it much more often. And then that was successful for a period of time. And then the bad guys said, how do we get around, or how do we circumvent, and how should we attack the backups? So what they did is they found different ways through APIs, through basically deleting the backups. They would go in, and so the industry kind of developed this best practice around backups in the last couple of years. You might have been reading it. You might even be doing it in your company. It's called the 3-2-1 rule. 3 copies of your backups on 2 different types of media. Usually it's disk and tape. And then one of those copies is air gapped in the cloud or offsite completely to a service provider. So this 3-2-1 rule. And so as long as you have that, you'll be able to restore, and that was effective for a while. And then the bad guys got smart. So you're noticing this kind of pattern of the industry does something, the professionals do something, and the bad guys then respond to it. Why? If they can prevent you from restoring your data, that is your last line of defense. They know that. And so if they can hurt you there, then you'll have to pay the ransom. So after the 3-2-1, what the bad guys did is they started to do what are called attack loops. And attack loops are very clever, very smart, very difficult to get out of. And what they do is they kind of time delay their ransomware. So they're very good at hiding their ransomware. They get it in through users, through clicking, through phishing, through spear phishing. They even call up on telephones and they socially engineer people on the front lines of your organization. Anyway, so they get in and their ransomware gets in, and it just stays dormant. It stays quiet for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months even, we have seen, and it doesn't do anything. They're very good at hiding their ransomware, signatureless, and they embed it in images and so on. And then after 6-9 months, basically during that time, you are backing up your data, and you're also backing up this ransomware, the malware. And so you've backed it up, and it's now been able to go and to traverse all the way into all of your copies of your backups, including your offsite copy, including your air-gapped copy. So if you think that you put backups and tapes, and you put the tapes offsite on a very high shelf somewhere, and you're thinking, the malware can't jump through the air like a superhero and get in there. Well, it can. And that's how it did it. So attack loops then They then detonate after 9 months, and you say, I've been doing 3-2-1. I've got my backups. Let me go to my backups. So the first thing you check to see if you have your backups, you're very happy that you even have your backups, that you can even restore. And as you are restoring, you're actually taking like a syringe, and instead of having a vaccine, a coveted vaccine, you actually are taking that malware and you're re-injecting it right back into your production environments. And then it happens again and it happens again. And this is called an attack loop, and you don't realize what's happening to you until you understand that you're basically putting the malware back into your environment. And it's very hard to get out of, because it's very difficult to know what original day, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months ago, you actually got caught, and that you actually got infected with the virus. And now you have to go and to restore data that might be several months old, and it's very painful for your users and your pros to kind of use old data, and it's very damaging. So if we move on to the next slide, this is a kind of attacks that have been happening in the last several maybe 2 years or 3 years now, kind of the more advanced attacks. Thanks for advancing it. So lately, and in an effect to respond to that, the industry is now, and you'll see different industry vendors talk about the different ways that they can protect you against malware and so on. And immutable backups have been something that has been recently cropping in the last kind of 12 to 18 months. And backup industry professionals and vendors have been saying, you know what, we are going to bring in like a worm, write once, read many type of technology into the world of backup. And so if we write the backup data, because we write it on worm technology, the ransomware won't be able to encrypt it, won't be able to change it, and so on. And so that's effective for a little while, but the bad guys have already thought of a way how to get around that. This is the good cop, bad cop thing. And what they do today is they actually get into the backup software itself, and they know that backup software is one of the least secure applications that you have in your IT environment. The security organization in many cases doesn't even know who the backup administrators are. They may not even know what kind of backup technology and processes are happening. They're busy working and protecting the most critical applications, the databases, the mail systems, the communication lines, and so on. And so the bad guys know that backup software is rarely integrated with multi-factor or two-factor authentication. It's very easy to trick backup and to steal the credentials. And so what they do is they get into your backup software like they were a bona fide user, and they go in and they change the settings in your backup software. And what I mean here is they'll change, there's multiple things that they do, but one of the most common ones is they will change your retention rules from 5 years, 3 years, 7 years, 20 years. Different industry verticals have different retention requirements for compliance and regulatory reasons. And they'll go in and they'll change it from 5 years to 4 hours or 2 hours. 3 hours is common. And the reason why they do that is they want the backups to happen, and they want all the green check marks to be seen. And then after 3 hours, the retention rules run. And retention just means smart delete. So after 5 years, take the data, I don't need it anymore, delete the data, and so on. So here, after 3 hours, go ahead and delete the data. And the immutable storage and other techniques that the backup and the IT administrators use to make sure that the data isn't protected, the backup software is actually getting used against itself, and it's being told to delete its own data, and that's not seen as something that's malicious. And so it happens. The other things that they change are password lengths, password attempts to change password, attempts to log in, from 3 attempts to logging you out to unlimited attempts, and then they brute force in. They do lots of mayhem, and they actually end up using the backup software against itself. And so these are called immutable subversion attacks. And what you're seeing here is, if we can move, is this evolution of how they attack your backup, how they attack your last line of defense. If you could move to the next slide, please. And there's going to be more. So the whole point here is, as I said earlier, the huge investments that your directors and that your executives are making in protecting the processes, the people, and the technology, and enhancing it. The reality is, you'll never be immune to cyber criminals. Thinking is that if they want your data, they will find a way to get your data. Not a week or a month goes by with some organization getting attacked by somebody that has enough motivation to get your data, they can do it. But the whole point of, so then what can you do? You can cost too much to crack. So if you keep putting things in place and you make yourself just a little bit faster than your friend, the tiger is just going to grab your friend and then you can run free. So if you move to the next slide, what are some of the things that you should think about as you're looking at different solutions? If you move to the next slide, beautiful. So, of course, what you need to know is think about air gap. You don't want to have all of your backups, even multiple copies of your backups only in your environment. You do need to have them, like Johnny was saying, a second set of eyes. You need to have your own team. You need to have a second team just to make sure, because at the end of the day, your backup really is going to be your last line of defense. You should think about having artificial intelligence and the security of artificial intelligence around the backups that you have, sandboxing and attack loops prevention. If you can restore or if you can filter some of the, as part of the backup and the recovery stream, these are things to look for. How can I prevent the malware from getting into and infecting my backup jobs? And how do I prevent myself from reinfecting my backup data or when I do my restores later? Think about incorporating immutability and beware of buying an all-in-one solution. We all read about SolarWinds and other such solutions where they give you monitoring and backup and security, kind of all in one solution. And Johnny made an amazing explanation here today about all the different facets and how complex it can be, but it's doable, but you need to have, a plan. But if you think you can just pay a vendor and, they'll do it all for you, very dangerous, very risky. There's a lot of merit to Johnny was saying is keeping these things in specific kind of best of breed categories. And so on. So next slide, please. I'll thank everyone myself as well, and hopefully giving you some food for thought. Backup ultimately ends up being the last line of defense. In terms of external stakeholders, your insurance brokers, your insurance company that's working with you, your cyber insurance policy advisors are working with you. They will always end up asking you, not just do you have a backup, but how good is your backup? How are you securing? What's my process for securing my backups from being infected, from being deleted? Because I have to make sure. What's my process for increasing the costs of the bad guys to make sure that they just move along to the next easier victim? And with that, I'll end here and I'll pass it back to you, Jalay, and thank everybody.
Thank you, Aaron, for sharing your piece with us. I hope that every one of our guests here today have not or will not become a victim of that false sense of security. Okay, we're on the last stretch of this afternoon session, but before I hand you over to our last speaker, just a quick reminder that our chat box is still open for any questions that you may have. Just type it in and we'll get back to you during the Q&A portion. Now, we've heard about the current state of IT security and how we can protect our last line of defense. After all this, what role does Sandz play? To discuss how we at Sandz can help you modernize your data protection approach, with managed services, please welcome Mr. Henry Velasco. Sir Henry?
Thank you, Johnny and Aaron. Thank you, everyone, for coming and attending our webinar. So I'll be the last speaker for today. I'll just have a few slides and it'll only take me a few minutes so that we could go direct to the question and answer session. Okay, let me just remove my video so that we can focus on the slide. Next slide, please. So threats are continuously evolving. So let's define what are threats. Threats are defined, or disaster. Threats or disaster are actually defined as anything that will disrupt the business and result in a financial loss. And they're not going to stop anytime or cease anytime. Threats to our infrastructure and data, which is actually the lifeblood of our organization, is what this webinar is all about, and using backup as a last line of defense. Threats are both natural and man-made, and our country being prone to natural disasters, typhoons, earthquake, volcanic eruptions, floods are top of mind every time we think of formulating a disaster recovery or strategy. However, statistics shows that natural disasters make up only 3 to 5% of a disruption to our IT infrastructure. For example, a category typhoon like Yolanda or Haiyan has not brought down a single data center in the past couple of years. On the other hand, 90% of the disruption to our IT system is brought about by hardware failure, human error, both accidental and malicious, software failures like bugs, that's why we need to patch our system, theft, and malware, especially ransomware, are fast evolving as a major threat to business and IT. Next slide, please. So we need to be prepared. We always need to be prepared, and you've heard this before. It's not a question of if, but a question of when. So it's just a matter of time. So in the past 7 years of doing managed data protection, we find that majority of the companies across all sectors are actually half prepared. In scoping their current data protection system, we actually discover huge gaps in their data recovery preparedness. What's happening is that they put too much faith on their backup process, while many are following what Aaron called the 3-2-1 honored backup strategy, where you keep 3 copies of your data on 2 media and 1 offsite for the DR. Their backup strategy is very fragmented with various backup silos and point solutions scattered all over that are not well orchestrated. The notable gaps that we see are the lack of testing in their recovery process. And this is really expected because recovery process, like even restore drills of your backup, is actually very cumbersome, tedious, and very expensive. DR plans, while in place, are very static. They remain static and have not been updated and tested. DR drills are few and far in between and normally fails. Because DR projects are very expensive, total cost of ownership or TCO is the single reason why DR projects fail. And then operating expense and the lack of skills, not only security, but even doing backup, will kill DR solutions over time. So our approach, next slide, please. Our approach to modernizing data protection is to encourage enterprise to let this complex, cumbersome, and costly process be managed by professionals with deep domain experience in data protection and deliver those critical SLAs to protect the organization. One key SLA that we would like to discuss is recovery assurance. As you can see in this slide, we have 3 recovery processes. Starting on the left, basically operational recovery, which is actually installed on site, side by side with your production system for quick backup and restore to address the 90% failure, right? Which I mentioned a while ago. And we also call this performance tier for quick backup and restore. The second one in the middle is what we call site recovery. It is actually installed off-site as a failover DR target in case you permanently or partially lose your primary data center. And this site recovery is actually could be a hot, warm, or a cold tier, and more often than not is actually a combination of the 3. The last one on the right is what we call long-term recovery, which is the archiving of your data for long-term retention and regulatory compliance. We also call this the capacity tier. This could provide additional copy to your 3-2-1 rule. At the same time, we can provide immutability, like what Aaron said, and make it air gap, making your what we call backup zip code from a 3-2-1 to 3-2-1-1, the last one being an immutable copy and as well as an air gap. Of course, you have to add additional protection like multi-factor authentication so that the hackers cannot actually reset your retention policies. And then lastly, we conduct regular recovery and testing, which is one of the most important aspects of modernizing your backup. And finally, wrapping this up with automation to eliminate and or minimize at least human error. Next slide. So our managed services are all SLA based. They're not about technology. Basically, what we deliver are SLA, which are important to your operation. So when we say managed services, it could be partially or fully managed. So like what Johnny said, we're not only a set of eyes and second set of eyes, but also a second set of hands So we do 24 by 7 proactive monitoring and management. We can deploy this. We're actually location agnostic. If you are actually in a financial services sector where compliance is very important, we can deploy it as a private cloud, or we can make it hybrid or a multi-cloud. And then everything is basically consumption based, so which means there's no capital investment upfront, especially in this pandemic right now. There's basically very little budgets in modernizing your backup and technology. So one way to future-proof is to want to make sure that the technology that we will deploy and use to protect your data and deliver those SLAs are always in step with the current technology. Okay, next slide. So Sandz Solution, next slide, please. So we've been in this business, we've been operating in this region for the past 20 years. And basically, we're one of the pioneer in delivering managed services around data protection in the past 7 years. So that's all. That's actually the last, my last slide. And if there are no questions, I think we can go straight to the question and answer. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Sir Henry, and to all our participants. Again, threats are continuously and will continue to evolve, and it's best to always prepared for anything. We are now at the tail end of the event, but before we end this afternoon session, we would like to open the floor for any questions from our participants. Please feel free to type your questions in the chat box so we can have our panel of speakers to answer it. May I request all the speakers to please turn on your audio and video as we answer some of the few questions sent privately via our Sandz Marketing. I think this is for Aaron. Aaron, can files be scanned for anomalies before and after backing up?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, that's one of the best practices. And as I was saying in my presentations, it's something you do need to do to make sure that your backups don't get infected. People think just because they're backing up, their backups don't get infected as well. And you do need to do that, not only scanning the backups, but also the restores, because things change between the moment the file was backed up, and maybe it could be months, could be a few years later when the file needs to be restored.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Another question for Mr. Johnny Calvario. In your opinion, sir, does our market have enough skilled IT security practitioners?
Well, to be honest with you, most of the IT security professionals now, the background is actually IT operations. No? So again, probably numbers is just one of the challenges, but the mindset is the most important. No? You may have, for example, enough numbers, no? But the mindset of these people are mostly IT operations. No? So you need to convert to shift the mindset from IT operations to risk-based focus. No? So, well, numbers can definitely help in terms of managing cybersecurity, but most importantly, having the right mindset and probably enough numbers you can survive in managing cyber threats.
Okay, thank you, Sir Johnny. Aaron, another question for you. What is the most feasible way of preventing ransomware attacks?
Well, I don't think you can prevent it 100%. I think at the end of the day, if the bad guys want your data, they will find a way to get your data. And I think you need to just have a strategy. And I think the strategy is just make yourself more expensive to hack than the next guy. And they'll just move on, because the bad guys also have a mindset, and their mindset is how quickly and how fast and how easily can I go get paid? And if you just make the next guy easier for them to go get paid, they'll just move on to the next guy. So just make yourself a little bit harder, and that's the strategy. But preventing it 100%, don't think that you can. It's a fallacy.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. I think any one of you can answer this. For SaaS setup, what's the ideal way of making sure we have adequate backup in place?
Software as a service.
Yes.
Aaron?
Yeah,
towards
well,
the
you
security
can,
sector?
yeah. So, I mean, Asigra has the ability to back up your SaaS data, even if it's sitting in the cloud. So, my recommendation is to call Henry and his team, and they'll be able to back up your SaaS data. They'll use Asigra software, but, and not only can you back it up, but you can even scan your SaaS data for malware because for example, Microsoft 365, maybe some of your users have clicked things and put things into their OneDrive, without knowing it, not intentionally, unintentionally. And absolutely, you should and you can and you need to back up your SaaS data, just like all the other type of data, and for the same use case scenarios that you would need to back up regular data.
Yeah, to add to that,
Okay.
actually, SaaS like software as a service like Office 365, there's a false sense of security that because it's hosted by Microsoft, you don't need to back it. I
Mhm.
think we still have a responsibility to protect that data because the backup strategy of Microsoft is not all encompassing.
Okay, another question in the chat box. How do we achieve really the right mindset?
I'll give that to Johnny.
Yeah.
I just hope there's a magic. I have a magic wand that I can just put on top of the head of the people, and suddenly
Yeah.
change from operational mindset to risk focused mindset. No? Well, this is a very difficult question because I myself I am an IT person, no? And I can also attest to some of the existing CISO in the industry. Most of them, if not all of them, actually came from IT operations. No, it's not easy or quick to shift from operation to risk focused mindset. It really requires a lot of training and time and experiences. No, but my advantage being from I previously worked with a big four, no, previously big five, no, an auditing firm where you actually work with auditors for the rest of your life for the past 18 years, no. So that's actually for me easy to transfer or shift my mindset from traditional IT administration when I started in some of the known system integrator. I'm with Erich and some of the technical people of Sandz. No, we are all systems engineer. No, but when I shift from traditional system integration to security, I find it very difficult also to shift from IT, traditional IT mindset, implementing security controls, configuring firewalls, IPS, two-factor authentication, to shifting to if I turn this off, what will happen? If I turn this on, what will happen? So because of my experience working with IT auditor, it easy for me to shift from IT operations to security professional mindset. I'm not saying that you work with Big Four first, no, before you to jump to information security space. No? What I'm saying is you really need to have a proper training and experience, and you really need to work with your oversight function for you to have understanding of the business rather than just managing your technology environment.
Aaron?
Thank you, Sir Johnny.
Yes, Aaron?
Yeah, if I can
Aaron?
just add, I
Okay.
think there are three, what I've seen in successful, there are three important elements to doing it. The first and number one, I think, is lead by example. To answer the question that was asked, lead by example. So all of us on the call today, all of us are in a unique circumstance in our lives, in our roles that we play in our companies, to have an opportunity to lead by example. That's number one. Number two, reward good behavior. So when you see this kind of good behavior, people reporting, for example, Johnny was talking about how important it is to report so that you can take action, so you can understand what's happening and so on. Find opportunities to reward good behavior. And number three, get help. You can't do it alone. Nobody does it alone. Everybody has help. The biggest organizations, the most sophisticated organizations, they all get help. So recognizing that you're not alone, those are the lead by example, reward good behavior and get help.
Yeah, to add to that, no, in addition to those natural as well as man-made disasters I mentioned, one of the biggest threats we've been seeing is really apathy. So I think apathy somehow contributes to that bad mindset. So if we can overcome the apathy, I think we will be able to develop very good positive mindset.
Okay, for our
Agreed.
last question, Mr. Velasco, what is the scope of the managed services for data protection and how long is a subscription usually?
So the subscription is a minimum of 12 months. Like I said, it's zero capex. It's all consumption based, right? We'll do the scoping, and depending on the SLA that you want, it could be an end to end. Depending on those what we call RPO, RTO, it could be for your what you call this critical systems or including your non-critical systems. So the scope could be from a simple backup to a full DR or even business continuity with the full orchestration. So it's not a one size fits all. It depending on the posture or what is available in place. Because what we're seeing is that modernizing data protection is actually more of a green field in most cases. But like I said, we are seeing a lot of gaps. So one of the things that we like to do is make sure that we plug those gaps, huh, and bring you to that level of protection where you'll be able to deliver those SLA.
Okay, any more questions? If you don't have, thank you for all your questions. If you want to have a deeper discussion regarding the topics presented this afternoon, we can schedule a separate meeting after this event. Our marketing team will get in touch with you shortly. Okay, for our last announcement, before we close the session, we will be sending a post-event feedback form after this. Please don't forget to answer it in order for you to stand a chance to win gift vouchers from Sandz Solutions Philippines. Alternatively, you can scan the QR code showing on the screen now to access the feedback form. Okay, giving you enough time to scan it now, okay, to get a chance to win the gift vouchers from Sandz. Okay. On behalf of Sandz Solutions Philippines, thank you to our dear speakers, Mr. Johnny Calvario, Mr. Aaron Ferrajun, and Mr. Henry Velasco for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us today. And of course, a huge thank you to all our participants this afternoon. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you on our next event. God bless.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank
Thank you,
you.
You.
everyone. Thank you,
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Aaron. Thank you,
everyone.
Jenny.
Henry,
Thank
Iran,
you.
thank
Bye-bye.
you.